Hello, welcome to Granada Reports. We are live with the latest across the northwest.
Hello, on the programme this evening.
Say night-night.
Night-night. Love you.
Blow me a kiss.
Little George Hines was sleeping when the house next door blew up and killed him. Today, the man who caused that explosion was described as the neighbour from hell and jailed.
He's an utterly selfish individual who shows absolutely no regard for anybody.
The Prime Minister's hoping to move on from a bruising week, but has a conference speech convinced Tories.
What's the future of filmmaking? We'll be on the red carpet at Bolton's Film Festival to find out.
We chat to St Helens club legend Paul Wellens as he takes over at head coach at his hometown club.
And after a rather grotty start across the region this morning, there's been some late brightness to end the day. The rest of the weather details are coming up later on in the programme.
First tonight, 2-year-old George Hines was tucked up in bed on the 16th of May last year when there was a huge gas explosion next door. He died. His mother was trapped under rubble for 2 hours.
Well, today in court, the man responsible for that gas blast in Heysham in Lancashire was jailed for 15 years. 45-year-old Darren Greenham was described as the neighbour from hell who, under the influence of drink and drugs, cut the copper pipes in his house, intending to sell them for scrap.
George's parents told the court they'd reported their neighbour to the police and council, but had been let down. Tim Scott reports.
Night-night, Ethan.
Say it again. Say night-night, Ethan.
Hi, Ethan.
Say night-night.
Night-night.
Say love you.
Love you.
Blow me a kiss.
A much-loved and cherished little boy, but George Hines' life was cut short by the stupidity and recklessness of neighbour Darren Greenham, whose botched attempts to remove gas pipes caused a huge explosion that damaged over 50 homes. Greenham was described in court as a neighbour from hell who abused drugs and alcohol. When neighbours complained of the music and DIY at all hours of the day and night coming from his house, he became abusive. It was his decision to begin removing pipework from his own home to sell for scrap metal that led to George Hines' death. In the early hours of the 16th of May last year, Darren Greenham recklessly took an angle grinder to a gas pipe he'd exposed in his own home. Intoxicated once again by drink and drugs, he failed to notice that the gas was escaping. Little George Hines was asleep just a few yards away in the house next door, and when the gas ignited, George was killed in the explosion. Today, this fenced-off empty space is all that's left of George and Greenham's houses. We've heard that George's parents complained on numerous occasions to the police and to the council about the behaviour of Greenham. They felt their concerns weren't acted on. What have you got to say to that today?
So the police did respond to incidents and dealt with them as they saw fit at the time. I think today, certainly for George's parents, today is about the death of George, and it's about the sentencing of Darren Greenham.
Speaking of Greenham, how would you describe him?
He's an utterly selfish individual who shows absolutely no regard for anybody, and the fact that he was prepared to put lives at risk for the simple fact of making some money from copper pipes is just, I think, for many, unbelievable.
In her victim impact statement, George's mum Vicky said, after the explosion, being trapped in the rubble was the most scared I had ever been in my life. That was until I arrived at the hospital to be told that George had died. George's father Stephen told the court, by Darren Greenham cutting a gas pipe to make a few quid, I have lost my son, my absolute world. After their home was destroyed in the explosion, Preston Crown Court heard George's parents are now living in a caravan, financially ruined, and both having to deal with mental health issues. Sentencing Greenham to 15 years, Judge Robert Altham said he was a selfish and disruptive neighbour. He said he shared George's parents' incomprehension that anyone could put the lives of so many at risk for the sake of stealing a few lengths of copper piping. Tim Scott, ITV News.
Well, in other news this evening, pickets have been staged at the region's railway stations as workers continue with strike action. Today's walkouts were held by the Train Drivers Union, ASLEF. Further strikes by the RMT Union are planned for Saturday. Unions have warned there'll be even more disruption in the coming months unless the government come up with a new pay offer and a cost of living settlement.
A leading animal charity is calling for the breeding of American bulldogs to be banned after the death of a 65-year-old woman in a dog attack in Liverpool. Anne Dunn was pronounced dead inside a house in Vauxhall on Monday afternoon. Merseyside police says 5 American bulldogs were humanely destroyed and a 31-year-old man arrested has now been released on bail. Peter says the history of the breed is worrying.
When you think about why they were created, why they were selectively bred, it was to fight bears and it was to attack other dogs and attack people. It is incredibly difficult to change dogs' characteristics when they've been bred in this way.
Right, well, next tonight, and after a bruising week for the Prime Minister with U-turns and Tory infighting, today Liz Truss vowed to get Britain through what she called these stormy days.
Yeah, she was briefly interrupted by protesters who heckled her about fracking, but used her first conference speech as leader to try to win back the support of her party.
So how did that go down with North West Conservatives? Our political correspondent, Leisha McNally, has been finding out.
She walked on to end people's moving on up. But first, the Prime Minister had to move people on. From what's been a chaotic few days at conference and a speech interrupted by this.
I promised on entering Downing Street to act. Let's get them removed.
These scenes, another chapter in a noisy few days, with rows over tax U-turns, benefits and cabinet discipline. The Prime Minister's task to win back her party, and she stood by her plan for growth.
It will be difficult. Whenever there's change, there is disruption. And not everybody will be in favour of change, but everyone will benefit from the result. A growing economy and a better future.
The stakes for this speech really couldn't be higher. Her own party watching closely. This councillor had travelled from Preston, needing to be convinced.
I did vote for her. There's a bit of buyer's remorse at the moment. I'm hoping she can prove us wrong.
So what do you need to hear from Liz Truss in her speech?
Focus on levelling up, a clear plan and direction, really.
That was Daniel speaking to us before the Prime Minister's speech, and this was him after it.
So has she won you over?
Yes, I think she has, in all fairness. She was very positive, she was very clear in what she was saying, and I think, you know, she's got a real plan for growth, and so I think, yes, she has impressed me.
It wasn't a speech packed with new policies, but ask her politicians and they'll tell you it was enough.
What we're saying is we've got to grow the economy, make the pie bigger. I love that analogy, I think that's great.
I think sometimes in Westminster we can get caught up in bubble issues, but actually we know, as the Prime Minister said, we've all had that moment of looking at our paycheck and going, look at the taxes we're paying. And that message, I think, really resonates with people.
Benefits aren't a bubble issue. How big a concern is that for your constituents if she doesn't fulfil that former promise to keep them in line with inflation?
Yeah, I think social security is a big issue and it's always a really difficult balance. You know, what we're trying to do is make sure we look after the most vulnerable people in our society, but also make sure that work always pays.
Prime Minister's absolutely rocked it. Absolutely fantastic message for the British people. She wasn't talking to people in the hall, she was talking to people at home.
But back in the northwest, the polls forecast a tough time for the Conservatives. Shoppers here in Chorley Market unsure if the Prime Minister truly understood their concerns.
Maybe she needs to go somewhere and maybe stay with the family on lower income just to see our struggle.
I think the government doesn't know what they're doing and they've got themselves in the corner. North and South divide, still a big issue. You look down there and you see all the wealth, all the nice fancy cars, all the big houses, all the nicely suited people. What do we have up here? Me in my shorts, can't afford a full pair of pants.
Now, I was talking to one of the lads who has a meat stall at the back there yesterday, and he said to me, John, he said, I'm a Tory voter, but I'm going to vote Labour. And I said, well, I'm going to do the exact same thing. What would I ask her? When we're going to have the next general election?
She says that's still 2 years away. But as Liz Truss heads back to a crucial few weeks in Westminster, there are still some who wonder whether she'll be long gone by then. Leisha McNally, ITV News.
Well, as you heard in Leisha's report there, the Prime Minister chose M People's hit Moving On Up to start her speech. And the Manchester band are livid about it, especially, it seems, Heather Small's son, who is a Labour councillor. Read all about that on our website at itv.com/Granada. I think there are a few members of the band not happy about that today.
Magnificent tune, though. That takes me back to bopping around the dance floor at the Kingsway in Southport back in the day.
Oh, that's a nice memory.
I'm sure you guys were doing the same. Lots still to come on the programme. We're hearing from the head coach at Super League champions St Helens on his first day in the job.
And we've seen some really gusty winds across the region today. Blustery winds continue to feature over the next few days with more rain in the forecast. And that's coming up later on in the programme.
Now, it is often called the gift of life, but for one family in Merseyside, that gift really was extra special.
Yeah, 11-year-old Luke Amos was diagnosed with kidney disease when he was just a few weeks old. Last year, he was put on dialysis. Luckily, his dad was found to be a match and so donated one of his own kidneys to save his life.
But that's not where the story ends, because watching what Luke was going through was his uncle, who's now working on saving other lives too.
Our correspondent Mel Barham's been to meet both Luke and his family.
A year ago, Luke would have been too ill to do this. Diagnosed at just a few weeks old with polycystic kidney disease, he'd spent the last year hooked up to a dialysis machine 3 times a week.
So while I was on dialysis, I couldn't do biking or football, of course, because of my line. And I felt even tighter than I was before because it was draining me, the dialysis machine.
With his kidney function so low, his only option was a transplant. And incredibly, his father stepped forward to donate one of his own kidneys to save his life.
Once I discovered that I was a match, I felt so grateful that I was finally able to help Luke. And like any other parent, you'd do anything for your kids.
But Luke's dad wasn't the only family member to make a life-changing decision, because his uncle, a medical researcher, decided to completely change his specialism from lungs to kidneys in order to help.
I thought, well, I would like to research something that's going to help not necessarily Luke, but patients like Luke in the future. I think sometimes as researchers we kind of lose focus when you're just in the lab every day. But having gone with Luke for dialysis and seeing him sat there 3 days a week attached to a machine, you take that back into the lab with you and you realise this is really important, we need to get this research.
The problem John wanted to solve was the issue of so many transplants having to be cancelled because organs just weren't surviving the process. With Luke as inspiration and funding from Kidney Research UK, John and the team at Pebble Biotech have been working on what could be a game changer in transplantation.
What they're doing here is essentially trying to extend how long an organ can survive outside the body without deteriorating. At the moment, around 100 kidneys are wasted every year because there is such a small window of time that an organ can be kept viable.
Currently, kidneys would be just put on ice for up to 24 hours, for example. But during this time, these kidneys are getting injured all the time. They're not being supplied with oxygen, they're not being supplied with nutrition, and so they're starting to die. So we're using this technology to try and keep the kidneys under perfect health conditions. So at the end of 24 hours, it looks as good as when it came out of the body.
Luke was lucky. A live donation meant his new kidney didn't need to be kept on ice and transported across the country, but in the future that might be needed.
We know that transplant isn't a cure. We know that Luke will probably at some point in his life have to go through this again. So any kind of innovative solutions that John's working on at the moment is so encouraging.
They're hoping this method could be adopted in hospital as early as the next 2 years, meaning more transplants could be possible and more lives like Luke's could be saved. Mel Barham, ITV News, Ellesmere Port.
That's truly incredible research that they're doing, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, great to see Luke doing so well. And very handy footballer and basketball player as well, which brings us nicely on to sport. And another Champions League night for Manchester City. And it is fair to say Pep Guardiola's not trying to take the spotlight off Erling Haaland, Chris.
So often we see managers trying to dismiss the hype around young players when they're in great form. But Pep Guardiola says Erling Haaland deserves to be compared with every great striker of the last 20 years. Tonight, City are at home to Copenhagen with all eyes on the Norwegian, who scored 17 goals in his first 11 City matches.
At his age, no one can compete with him. No one. So the numbers speak for himself, and inside in the locker room, on the pitch, we see things that they are not in the stats that make us feel happy to have him here.
Wigan Athletic could climb into the Championship playoff spots tonight if results go their way after Blackburn lost last night. They were also helped by Sunderland's result, Blackpool holding them to a goalless draw. Bolton were beaten in League One, but Fleetwood managed a 1-0 win at Burton Albion. Well, now to Rugby League. And how do you follow a head coach who's just won a third straight Super League title? Well, that's the task facing St Helens club legend Paul Wellens. Today, he took the reins from Christian Wolff, who's heading back down under. I caught up with the former Saints fullback on his first day in the job. Paul, you grew up on the terraces of Knowsley Road supporting St Helens. What would that young version of yourself think about this job you've got today?
I think he'd be a little in disbelief, I would say. But one thing that I've always had, and since being that young boy on Knowsley Road Terrace, is a huge passion for St Helens and its rugby league team. And to sit here as the head coach is something that I class as a huge privilege, and I'm really excited to get started.
What have your family made of this? Because they're all big Saints fans, aren't they? They must be proud today.
Yeah, I would imagine they are. I mean, probably a little bit surreal for them at the moment. I think it was when I started playing for the club that a team that they come and stand on the terraces and watch and support, they'd be doing that if I wasn't involved at all. But I think obviously with me being involved for many years like I have, it's kind of become a little bit normal. But I think this situation they'll find a little strange for sure. You are taking over from Christian Wolff, a man who has won 3 back-to-back grand finals with St Helens. Those are big shoes to fill, aren't they? Yeah, absolutely they are. But one thing that I've become accustomed to being at this club is that every year when we get on the starting blocks, our intentions are to go and win. So that won't change next year. I'm not daunted by it, no, I'm really excited by the challenge. Obviously Christian's done a fantastic job here and I've learned so much from that experience, which I feel equips me to take on this role. When you were weighing up whether to take this job, I mean, I don't know if it only took 5 minutes or 5 days, but was your reputation ever part of your thought process? Because we saw with Kieran Cunningham here, a man who's got a statue outside this ground, that he wasn't infallible as a coach, and you can go from being the hero to the bad guy overnight as a coach, can't you? Yeah, you can, and that's not just Kieran Cunningham or Paul Wellens. That we were in the same for Christian Wolff and Justin Holbrook before me. And what we are is in a position where results are expected, particularly in this town. Because you live in the town. Yeah, exactly. And everywhere I go, whether it's dropping the kids off or picking them up from school or to the local petrol station, the people make their intentions perfectly clear about what they expect from this team. But that's what I love about it. That's what I love it. The town has a huge passion for its rugby league team, and the rugby league team, I know, have a huge passion for the fans that come here and support them week in, week out. I don't doubt for 1 second we're going to get great support off them again in 2023, and hopefully we can bring them some more success. We wish Paul Wellens all the luck in the world. Great to see somebody taking charge of their hometown club. It's brilliant.
Isn't it just, yeah, but as he alluded to in that report there, legends of the club don't always go on to become great head coaches of the club, and he seems to be fully aware of that pressure, doesn't he?
Well, Kieran Cunningham's name was mentioned in the press conference today. He was keen to point out that the team that Kieran Cunningham inherited didn't have the same level of players, the same quality of players that he's inherited. They've just won 4 grand finals on the bounce, so he'll be expected to do well. But he has been taking some advice from the England head coach, Sean Wayne, who himself was a Wigan legend and took over at Wigan, and he's been of great support to Paul while he's been making this decision.
Yeah, proof that it does work sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Chris, thank you very much indeed.
Lovely to be surrounded by Hall brothers once again. This is
very
a
much.
real joy tonight, it really is. And next, earlier this week we brought you the world premiere of The Book Thief, which is showing in Bolton, and tonight it's the turn of Chester Storyhouse Theatre.
Yes, they've got the pre-West End premiere of the new musical, The Time Traveller's Wife. It's been written by Grammy winner Joss Stone and Eurythmics star Dave Stewart. Our entertainment correspondent Caroline Whitmore went to chat to Dave and some of the stars in the cast.
My masterpiece, something I've always seen.
The world premiere of The Time Traveller's Wife here at the Chester Storyhouse Theatre. How excited are you two? This is a brand new musical.
Very excited, yeah.
Very nervous, very excited, all that.
Joanna, you play Claire, who is the time traveller's wife. For people who have been living under a rock, just tell us, what is the story all about?
Okay, well, it's about Henry and Claire, and they go through all the normal things in life. They meet, they fall in love, get married, have a baby, but it's all out of order because Henry happens to be a time traveller.
The one that's been time travelling to visit me since I was a kid.
Shh, whoa, hey! You are not supposed to know that. How do you know that?
David from Warrington, how proud are you that this brand new musical is getting its world premiere here in Chester?
It's brilliant, it's fantastic. There's so much brilliant theatre in the Northwest, brilliant TV as well. And it's great for a theatre as beautiful as this, has already won awards, to have a world premiere. It's going to go to the West End and be this huge thing. And here it is, and these lucky audiences get to see it for the very first time.
Dave Stewart, it's great to see you here in Chester. This is a world premiere of your musical, obviously written by yourself and Joss Stone. Are you excited?
Well, let me tell you, Caroline, it's been very interesting wandering around the wet and windy streets of Chester. No, but actually it's a very beautiful place. To put something on as complex as this, it always attracts me to being involved in a musical. Because I've got one of those busy brains, I like seeing panic on people's faces. When you write a song, you go, right, this is how the song goes, and that's how it ends. In a musical, well, the scene might be 17 seconds. It's a lot more complex than, you know, writing Sweet Dreams. Sweet dreams are made of these. Annie and I would tend to write them in 15, 30 minutes, song was finished.
Really?
Yeah, Annie and I have had a 45-year relationship, still talk to each other nearly every day. Annie and I lived together for about 3.5, 4 years, and we didn't write one song at all. Decided to live separately, and we wrote like 150 sort of love songs. So
Your very favourite song that you've ever written, which would it be?
Here Comes the Rain Again. It's not like a straightforward pop song. I was so impressed with the Storyhouse Theatre here in Chester, because most times creativity gets kicked out, but it actually is the fulcrum of how a community comes together.
Well, good luck with this world premiere here in Chester.
Thanks very much.
How great to have Dave Stewart on the programme, legend.
Dave Stewart, and with that hat as well, he's going to need that in the rain in Chester. Time for the weather, here's Joe.
Why do I need a shower? I've been out in the rain.
The faster you go, the sooner you'll be out. You'll save water too.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada Weather.
Hello, good evening to you. Over the course of the next couple of days or so, more unsettled weather to come. The rain and fairly strong winds this morning have tended to turn to showers, and over the last few hours or so there's been a few rumbles of thunder. As we go into this evening, further showers are likely. Tomorrow, a blustery day once more, with more rain expected on Friday. At the moment, Saturday should be largely fine. The details then, with low pressure in charge, it's pushing successions of fronts across the UK from the Atlantic. High pressure very gradually trying to build in, certainly as we get towards Saturday, giving us a dry start to the weekend. However, before that, spells of rain to come, and we keep the blustery theme going. In the meantime, this evening, some of those showers merging to form longer spells of rain. Perhaps a little drier as we get towards midnight and beyond. Still blustery though tonight, and temperature-wise perhaps down to around 9 or 10 degrees. A little cooler than last night across the board. As we go into tomorrow, most places should start the day on a dry note, and the sun will be rising at 7:21, setting tomorrow evening at 6:36. Now perhaps if you're out early tomorrow, it will be dry and bright for you. quite blustery winds again. I keep saying that word, but gusty winds really feature over the next couple of days or so. Sunshine tending to turn more limited as we go through the afternoon, cloud building, and we'll see showers packing in across the northwest of England and the Isle of Man. Some of these merging to form longer spells of rain during the middle part of the day. A little drier by tomorrow afternoon, but a fair hangover of cloud, I would have thought. 16 or 17 Celsius will feel less chilly than this afternoon. And looking ahead, rain expected during the day on Friday. Saturday should be largely dry. Bye-bye.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Thanks, Joe. Well, just before we go, we've got a little bit of Beatles nostalgia for you.
Yes, that's right. The Fab Four's debut single has been performed once again into Paul McCartney's childhood home.
I'll always be true, so believe. Love me do.
Yeah, it just still sounds amazing, doesn't it? Well, it was in this house that Love Me Do was written. It was released 60 years ago today, and to mark the occasion, Sir Paul invited 2 new artists to perform covers of the song in his old living room in Allerton. Jazz singer Nee Maxine and indie pop group Traits were the acts selected.
60 years old, that song. Such a great song. And what a fantastic moment for them as well. Congratulations to them. That is it from us for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. From Vicky and myself, bye-bye.
Good night. Enjoy your evening.